Hello and welcome back. This time something completely different. I decided to build a gaming board for tabletop wargaming. The American Civil War is what I thought I would want to try out. So first things first, I need a gaming board. So I used the styrofoam plates and cut the basic structure into that. This one would be the battlefield at Fort Donelson. So I needed to cut out some little rivers, and I needed a little bit of a hill. So all of that I just transferred that from a little map, and cut that out with a sharp hobby knife just to get the basic features done, cutting out rivers, and in other places I just used a different sort of styrofoam to glue things one on top of the other, stack them up to get a little bit of a hill. And I just used wood fillers or some stuff to repair your walls or something, simply because I had that to glue that all together. That would probably work with some caulking material just as well, but since I had these wood fillers, I just used those to get rid of them because they're getting a little bit old. After I was happy with the shape that the plastic or the styrofoam had, I just applied more wood filler to smooth out the landscape, to apply some soft slopes and to fill in a little bit in the riverbeds and things like that. And after applying this whole stuff, I just used a wet sponge to smoothen it out and make it a nice surface, which made it a little bit more wet, and that resulted into more time waiting for it to dry. So it took me a little bit more time than I expected it to be, but the result was quite nice. While I was waiting for all the other stuff, the paint and everything, to dry, I cut a lot of styrofoam pieces into smaller pieces and tried to build the fort itself, the fortification of Fort Donelson. So kind of the right shape, I would think. I hope, at least. And it has a floor, so first I thought to just glue the whole thing onto the two big styrofoam plates, but I'm not sure if I want to have that all in one big piece, because then you can never use the table for anything else, because it's so iconic to have this fortification somewhere. So that's the problem that you would have when you build such a battlefield. If you have all the features in it that you might want to have, then it is just that one place, like in this case Fort Donelson, and you would have to build another table for every game you want to play, or you play the battle for Fort Donelson for the rest of your life. So that is always a little bit of the question. So I thought I would just leave some of the key features in the way that they can be removed, so I can reuse the table or the two big plates of the battlefield for something else later on. When you are happy with the way the landscape looks like, and you shaped everything and added all the rivers and mountains and whatnot, what you want or need, then it's time to give the whole thing some color. So I used PVA glue and added some water, and then simple acrylic paint, the cheapest that you can get actually, whatever you might have lying around, and mix it all up. I added some fine sand, and you can add at this point, of course, everything you might think you want to have in your landscape: sand, flocking, little pebbles or whatever, to design the landscape. And then I applied this whole mixture all over the landscape. So I started with this light brown for the fields, and I would change the color tones in between. And as you can see here, that looks like a very light color, like a sand, beige, brown, something. And you would see a little bit later that it turned out to be very dark, because the PVA glue makes it look like a very light tone, but since PVA glue dries up almost transparent, that part disappears and the darker color remains. So I repaint that a little bit later. But this is just to make it, to give it a basic look, and to figure out how all the colors work together, and how to, which areas to apply which color to. So you have fields, and like here more the rocky parts, and which is forest and so forth. And that would of course be different depending on what kind of map and stuff you are designing actually. Then I try to get the general layout here, and painted all the roads and paths just to see how it looks. And then I would refine that a little bit later with basically just using the paint, acrylic paints, and you have a little bit of a Bob Ross moment there, where you can just mix it up, add a little bit more paint, make it a little bit stronger tones, and blend it all in, and you can use a little bit more water and things like that to smoothen that out, just so you get all the color nuances that you might want to have on your landscape. And after the paint dried, something looks like this. I mean, it's hard to get all that on the table because I don't have so much space, but I would try to get it all together. So the cliff is supposed to be somewhere where the camera is right now, but I do have it. Like this. So this took me a couple of days. Oh, wait a second, I have to switch on the other light, because that lamp makes a terrible noise all the time. So that took me from Friday to Monday, give or take, so extended weekend. And that's mostly because this filler here that I used for that was drying a lot slower than I expected it to do, and because I got distracted in building a lot of other things. If you would focus only on the table, it would probably be a little bit faster to fix it. On the other side, where the drying time is always there. So then we have some little accommodations there, and some of those classic fences that I built in between. Something like this. Should be somewhere here on the fields as well, maybe. Yeah, I just put it all on one side onto the table, otherwise I have to kick the camera around. Started with things like that, so I can have place for putting up the trees. The trees right now are just very raw, since they should look winterly as well. So, and now we have a house without a roof, because I didn't glue it. And the very few miniatures that are at least halfway painted, but it's a start. So the fort itself, and well, one house represents the place of Dover, which is actually more like a smaller village, and then we have the fields on that side. and some trees that are still very without any leaves. It's a bit of a problem because usually you would of course make those proper trees with all the little branches and stuff on them, but since this is winter I thought I would just leave them like they are like now and just change it afterwards. So this would be one of those stands for one brigade, like this one here. And these smaller fortifications and obstacles are later used in game, so I would have to paint them obviously. And they can be used for fortifying units that are like digging in themselves. So they should be about the size of those stands to represent digging in or fortified units. Yeah, I could go on building details and refining the whole thing. Like first of all would be probably fill in water into the rivers, which look like, well, black painted thingies here. But first of all, this is maybe a little bit temporary because it is winter and that is probably not too often used. And second, it is very much Fort Donelson, so you cannot really use it too much for other places and landscapes. And it should not have too much of a detail yet. It can have as much as you want, but it is for playing. It's not a diorama and it's not about figure painting. It's about play pieces on the table. So yeah, I usually get distracted with things like that, but that's actually not what it is supposed to be. So, and the next one would be try to play a game, get some figures on the stands and try out the game rules. It might take a little while because I have to work in between, nasty stuff, but somehow I have to. And yeah, I would try to get some more figures painted properly and in the meantime play with those that I showed you before that I just rawly painted.